Story 1. Gerald Wayne Tigner, Jr. was born on December 27, 1972. He was born in the United States. He was an African-American male. Gerald grew up in Waco, Texas. Waco is a city in the central part of the state. He was raised mostly by his mother. His father was not around very much while Gerald was growing up. Gerald also had a close relationship with his grandmother. She helped raise him when he was a baby. Later in his life, his grandmother remained an important person to him. When Gerald was young, he began getting into trouble. His first recorded offense happened in August 1989. At that time, Gerald was 16 years old. He committed a burglary. A burglary means he entered a building or property illegally to steal something. Because he was a juvenile, he went to a juvenile court. In January 1990, he was granted probation for that burglary. Probation means he was not sent to prison, but had to follow rules and stay out of trouble. Gerald did not stop breaking the law. When he turned 18 years old, he got more convictions. In January 1992, he was convicted of criminal mischief. Criminal mischief means he damaged someone else's property on purpose. For this crime, he received a suspended sentence and probation. A suspended sentence means the judge gave him a punishment, but did not make him serve it right away, as long as he behaved. Also in January 1992, Gerald was convicted of making a terroristic threat. A terroristic threat means he threatened to harm someone in a way that made that person afraid for their safety. Again, he received a suspended sentence and probation. The same month, January 1992, Gerald was convicted of evading detention. Evading detention means he ran away or tried to get away from a police officer who was trying to stop him or arrest him. He received another suspended sentence and another probation. So by the time he was 19 years old, Gerald had 4 different run-ins with the law, 1 juvenile burglary, and 3 adult convictions for criminal mischief, terroristic threat, and evading detention. Each time, the court gave him a second chance with probation or a suspended sentence. Then on December 5, 1992, something more serious happened. On that day, Gerald shot and killed a man named Bobby Ray Harris. Bobby Ray Harris was a former boyfriend of Gerald's mother. Gerald shot him 3 times on the front lawn of Gerald's own house. After the shooting, Gerald confessed to the police that he killed Bobby Ray Harris. But Gerald said he acted in self-defense. He said Harris burst into his house and that he was afraid for his life. The police arrested Gerald for this murder. He was indicted, which means a grand jury formally accused him of murder. Then he was released on bond. Bond means he paid money to the court so he could stay out of jail while he waited for his trial. So by the summer of 1993, Gerald was 20 years old. He was free on bond for the murder of Bobby Ray Harris. He was living in Waco. He spent time with friends. He drove around in his truck. He had already been in trouble many times, but no one had yet stopped him from committing more violence. On August 31, 1993, Gerald was out of jail on bond. He was living in Waco, Texas. He was 20 years old. Around 5 o'clock in the afternoon on that day, Gerald was driving in a truck. He was with 2 friends. One friend was named Guan Scott. The other friend was Timothy Scott, who was Guan's brother. Timothy was driving the truck. While they were driving through a suburban street in Waco, they saw another car. Inside that car were 2 men. One man was named Michael Watkins. He was 32 years old. The other man was named James Williams. He was 22 years old. Both were African-American males. Gerald knew these 2 men. They were acquaintances. He had met them before, but they were not close friends. When Gerald saw Michael Watkins and James Williams in their car, he told Timothy Scott to turn the truck around. Timothy made a loop around the block. Then they came back to where the other car was. Gerald got out of the truck. Guan Scott also got out of the truck. They walked over to the car where Watkins and Williams were sitting. The two men were still inside their car. Gerald began talking to Watkins and Williams. The conversation did not go well. It became an argument. Gerald started yelling at them. The exact reason for the argument was later described by prosecutors as a drug-related robbery attempt, but at that moment, the argument grew very heated. Then Gerald pulled out a handgun. He began firing the gun into the car where Watkins and Williams were sitting. The car carrying Watkins and Williams started to roll away. It moved slowly down the street. But Gerald did not stop shooting. He walked alongside the moving car and kept firing his gun at the two men inside. After some time, Gerald ran out of ammunition. His first gun was empty, so he went back to the truck. When he got to the truck, he retrieved a second gun. Then he turned around and walked back toward the car. As he walked back, he saw that Michael Watkins had fallen out of the car. Watkins was on the ground. He was trying to crawl away to escape. Gerald walked up to Watkins. He stood over him. He straddled him, which means he stood with one leg on each side of Watkins' body. Then Gerald pointed the second gun at Watkins' head and shot him. After that, Gerald returned to the truck. He got inside. Timothy Scott drove the truck away from the scene. When the shooting was over, Michael Watkins was dead. He had suffered 10 gunshot wounds. 2 of those wounds were to his head. James Williams was also dead. He had suffered 7 gunshot wounds. 4 of those wounds were to his head. Both men died at the scene. They did not make it to a hospital. Later, the police found cocaine inside the car where Watkins and Williams had been sitting. At the time of the shooting, there were 2 people who saw what happened. One was Timothy Scott, who had been driving the truck. The other was a man named Roy Darden, who was nearby. Both of them saw Gerald shoot Watkins and Williams. After the shooting ended, Gerald did not call the police. He did not report what he had done. He simply drove away with his friends. The day after the shooting, on September 1st, 1993, the police arrested Gerald. They took him into custody. He was held in jail. 2 days after his arrest, on September 3rd, 1993, Gerald signed a written statement. The statement was 5 pages long. In that statement, he confessed to shooting Michael Watkins and James Williams. He described what he did. 5 days after that, on September 8th, 1993, Gerald gave a second confession. This time, he spoke into a tape recorder. The police recorded his voice. In that taped statement, he again admitted to the shootings. The police also talked to the 2 witnesses. Timothy Scott told the police that Gerald was the shooter. Roy Darden also told the police that Gerald was the shooter. Both of them identified Gerald without any doubt. The police collected the guns and matched the bullets to the weapons. The ballistics evidence showed that the bullets came from the guns Gerald used. On September 29, 1993, a grand jury indicted Gerald for capital murder. Capital murder is a murder that is especially serious, such as killing more than one person. Gerald went to trial for the first time in 1994. The jury found him guilty of capital murder. The same jury sentenced him to death. He was sent to death row. But Gerald's lawyers appealed the case. An appeal is when a higher court reviews the trial to see if any mistakes were made. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals looked at the case. They found one mistake. The prosecutors had not given Gerald's lawyers a copy of his tape-recorded confession within the time that the law required. Because of that error, the appeals court threw out the conviction. Gerald was given a new trial. In 1997, Gerald went to trial for the second time. The prosecutors again presented the written confession, the taped confession, and the 2 eyewitnesses. The jury again found Gerald guilty of capital murder. The jury again sentenced him to death. This second sentence was given on March 5, 1997. Gerald appealed again. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals upheld the conviction and sentence on April 28, 1999. Gerald then asked the United States Supreme Court to review his case, but on February 25, 2002, the Supreme Court refused to hear it. While waiting on death row, Gerald maintained that he was innocent. He said his confessions were false. He said he was at his grandmother's house when the murders happened. He said another person did the shooting. However, the courts did not accept these claims because the evidence against him was strong. Gerald's execution date was set for March 7, 2002. On that evening, he was given a last meal. He requested fried chicken, French fries with ketchup, 2 cheeseburgers with all toppings, a bag of potato chips, apple cobbler, white cake with white icing, a pitcher of lemonade, and a pitcher of Sprite. Before he died, Gerald made a final statement. He said, "I got convicted on a false confession because I never admitted to it, but my lawyer did not put this out to the jury. I did not kill those drug dealers." After his final statement, the lethal injection was given. Gerald Wayne Tigner, Jr. was pronounced dead at 6:21 p.m. on March 7, 2002. He was 29 years old. The families of Michael Watkins and James Williams were left with the loss of their loved ones. Gerald's mother and grandmother had already passed away before his execution. The case was closed and no further legal actions were taken. Story 2. Tracy Lee Housel was born on May 7, 1958, at King Edward VII Memorial Hospital in Paget, Bermuda. His father was William Franklin Housel. His mother was Lula May Elkins Housel. Both parents were American civilians. His father worked as a sheet metal worker at Kinley Air Force Base. At that time, Bermuda was a British territory. Because he was born there, Tracy held British citizenship as well as American citizenship. The family left Bermuda when Tracy was about 1 year old. They moved to the United States. Tracy's childhood was spent in poverty. The family lived in North Carolina and later in Columbia Heights, Rhode Island. Columbia Heights was a ruined former mill town. The mill had closed down. The neighborhood was very poor, like a white ghetto. The Housel family was among the poorest families in the area. Many children in the neighborhood were left unsupervised at night. Tracy was no different. Drugs and alcohol were common among both children and adults. Tracy's mother, Lula, was very young when she married. She was only 14 years old. Her husband, Bill Housel, was 43. Lula came from an extremely poor background in North Carolina. Her family had a long history of health problems, including diabetes and low blood sugar. Lula herself suffered from severe arthritis and low blood sugar. She also became a known alcoholic during Tracy's childhood. A coworker once said that Lula drank straight alcohol from a thermos and got drunk at work. She would often show up drunk at the local Legion Hall. She was frequently asked to leave or carried out. Tracy's father, Bill Housel, was also an alcoholic. He was known for unpredictable violence. He frequently hit his children in the head and face with his hands. He also beat them with a belt. Tracy and his brothers often came to school with black eyes, broken noses, and bruises. One neighbor remembered a time when another neighborhood boy hit one of the Housel children. Bill chased that child, caught him, and beat him. Bill did not believe in doctors. So when Tracy or his brothers were sick or hurt, they did not receive medical care. Bill and Lula often fought with each other at the Legion Hall. Their arguments would sometimes turn into fist fights. Witnesses later said that when Tracy tried to stop his parents from fighting, both parents would turn their anger on him. One such incident happened when Tracy was 14 years old. After his parents turned on him, he ran to the home of one of his mother's friends. That friend called Lula. Lula responded by saying, "If you've got him, you can fucking keep him. Come get his shit." Tracy ended up staying at that friend's house for 3 months. Soon after he returned home, he left for good. As a child, Tracy was sickly from birth. He was born 1 month premature and weighed only 3.5 pounds. He had to stay in an incubator after his mother was discharged from the hospital. His health was so bad that the family moved to North Carolina partly because of it. He suffered constant headaches and fevers. One fever reached 105 degrees. His father refused to seek medical help for any of these illnesses. Tracy also suffered several head injuries as a child. At age 7, he fell off a roof and was knocked unconscious. He had a bad concussion. His pupils stayed dilated for several days. Later, another child attacked him with a baseball bat. That gave him another concussion. Finally, at age 11, he was in a car crash. He lost consciousness again and sustained brain damage. None of these injuries were treated by a doctor because his father did not believe in medical care. Despite his difficult home life, Tracy was well behaved at school. Teachers knew he was poor. They described him as a troubled child, but not a troublemaker. His 6th grade math teacher said Tracy was an overachiever for his social situation. The teacher was impressed by Tracy's efforts. However, other teachers said Tracy needed special help because of his troubled home life. One teacher, who was also a trained social worker, said that Tracy was never disrespectful, but he just wasn't there in school. Another teacher said Tracy was unfocused and unable to concentrate on his schoolwork. She said that although he was quiet and never said much in class, his sad eyes spoke a lot. In the early 1980s, Tracy moved to Iowa. There he formed a relationship with a widow named Robin Banks. Most of the time, Tracy was relaxed and easygoing. He acted as a loving father to her children. But he was also prone to sudden mood swings. During those times, he would fail to eat for days on end. He would drink alcohol and take drugs. His marriage to his wife in California had already fallen apart in October 1984. The marriage unraveled because Tracy was being on the road all the time as a truck driver. A month after leaving his wife, Tracy began living with Robin Banks in Council Bluffs, Iowa. In early 1985, Tracy Housel was working as a truck driver. He was often on the road. In February 1985, he was at a truck stop in Spring, Texas. He was waiting for a load to haul. He was dressed in leather clothing with a group of other truckers who acted like a rowdy motorcycle club. At that truck stop, he met a man named Troy. Troy had a large amount of cocaine and was trying to sell it. Troy got very drunk. Housel helped Troy walk out to his truck. Then Housel went back to the bar area of the truck stop. Housel later said that he heard some other guys planning to rob Troy of all his cocaine. Housel told them not to do it, and they left Troy alone. But then Housel himself decided he wanted more cocaine. He climbed into the cab of Troy's truck. He said he only wanted to fix his nose again with cocaine and then leave. However, Troy woke up. Troy saw Housel in his cab and accused him of trying to steal the cocaine. Troy grabbed Housel by the throat. In response, Housel picked up a hammer that was in the cab. He hit Troy on the head with the hammer. He hit him 8 or 9 times. Then Housel took Troy's cocaine. He also took a CB radio, a stereo, and Troy's identification papers. He put these items into his own bag. He then drove Troy's truck to Beaumont, Texas. He left the truck there. Housel stated later that Troy was still breathing when he left Spring, but he believed Troy died somewhere between Spring and Beaumont. On February 20th, 1985, Troy's body was found in the sleeping area of his truck cab. The truck was parked 7 miles from Beaumont, Texas. Troy was nude from the waist down. He had been anally sodomized. The cause of death was the hammer blows to his head. After the Texas killing, Housel returned to Council Bluffs, Iowa, where he was living with Robin Banks. On March 29, 1985, he went to a truck stop in Council Bluffs. There he met a man named Gary. Housel asked Gary for a ride to Des Moines, Iowa. Housel said he wanted to look for a job there. Gary agreed to take Housel part of the way. Gary said he would drive him as far as Atlantic, Iowa, which was about halfway to Des Moines. They got into Gary's car and started driving. When they reached the exit for Atlantic, Housel pulled out a knife. He told Gary to keep driving. Gary obeyed. A couple of exits later, Housel told Gary to pull off the interstate and park the car. Gary did so. Then Housel demanded Gary's wallet. As Gary reached for his wallet, Housel stabbed him. Housel later gave a different version. He said that Gary made a gesture that Housel believed was a homosexual advance. Housel said he freaked and pulled out his knife and started stabbing Gary. Gary denied making any sexual advances. Regardless of the reason, Gary was stabbed. Gary got out of his car. Housel pushed Gary down a ravine. Gary climbed back up out of the ravine. Housel then stabbed him several more times. Housel threw Gary back into the ravine again. Gary had thrown his car keys away to stop Housel from taking the car. But Housel found a spare key in the center console. Housel then drove away in Gary's car. Gary survived the attack. Housel used Gary's credit cards in Iowa, Illinois, and Pennsylvania on March 30th and April 1st. He then drove the car to New Jersey. On April 2nd, 1985, Housel was in Phillipsburg, New Jersey. He went to the apartment of a friend of a young woman named Renee. At the apartment, Housel introduced himself using the name Troy. Around 11:30 at night, Renee said she was going home. Housel offered to walk her to her car. Renee accepted. When they got to her car, Housel got into the car with her. He began to strangle her. Then he forced her to perform oral sex on him. After that, he told her she was too nice to kill. He took all of her money and left. Renee survived. She later testified that she had marks on her neck from being strangled. Those marks did not disappear until late summer of that year. After the attack on Renee, Housel drove Gary's car to Spartanburg, South Carolina. He abandoned the car there. He then caught a ride from Spartanburg to Lawrenceville, Georgia. On April 6, 1985, Housel spent the night drinking alcohol. He drank all night. In the early morning hours of April 7, 1985, which was Easter Sunday, he went to a truck stop in Lawrenceville, Georgia. The truck stop was located near Interstate 85 and Pleasant Hill Road. At that truck stop, Housel met a woman named Jean Drew. Jean was 46 years old. She lived in Lawrenceville. She spent much of her time caring for her elderly mother who had Alzheimer's disease. On weekends, when her mother went to sleep, Jean sometimes went to the truck stop diner to talk with people because she needed social interaction. A waitress at the truck stop later remembered seeing Jean sitting with a young truck driver. They were laughing and chatting. The waitress also remembered that the young man was wearing noticeable jewelry, including a gaudy ring. Housel and Jean left the truck stop together in Jean's car. Her car was a silver gray Ford Mustang, a 1981 model. They drove to a secluded area. Housel later said they had sex in the car. Then they went for a ride. They parked in an open area behind some woods. That location was near Beaver Ruin Road in Gwinnett County, Georgia. Housel said they were having sex again in the back seat of her car. While they were having sex, Housel felt the urge to spit. He spat. His spit hit the inside of Jean's car window. Jean became angry. She started yelling at Housel. Housel lost his temper. He began striking Jean with his fists. There was blood all over the inside of the car. Housel and Jean got out of the car. Her nose was bleeding from the punches. She spit blood onto Housel. This made him even angrier. He hit her again very hard. She fell to the ground like a ton of bricks, according to Housel's later statement. Then Housel got on his knees. He strangled her with his hands. He kept strangling her for a long time. After she stopped moving, he picked up a stick. He beat her face with the stick until her face was a bloody pulp. Housel left Jean's body lying there. She was nude from the waist down. He got back into her silver gray Mustang. He drove the car to Daytona Beach, Florida. Once he arrived in Daytona Beach, he used Jean's credit cards to pay for a hotel room and other expenses. He stayed there for several days. He did not report the crime. He did not tell anyone what he had done. On the morning of April 7th, 1985, two men were driving past an old farmstead near Beaver Ruin Road in Gwinnett County, Georgia. They saw a silver-gray Mustang leaving the area early that morning. Later that same day, Jean Drew's body was found at that location. She was lying near an abandoned farmhouse, a smokehouse, and a barn. Her body was nude from the waist down. Her head had been beaten severely. Her face was disfigured. There were purple marks around her neck from strangulation. Her hands had blood smeared on them. The police were called. They arrived at the scene. A medical examiner later performed an autopsy. The pathologist found that Jean had been strangled while she was still alive. The strangulation force had lasted a long time. The hyoid bone in her neck was broken. Her fingernails had dug into her own skin and torn through it, which showed she had struggled hard. Several of her teeth had been knocked out. Her mouth was cut. Her skull was crushed in 3 places. The pathologist could not count how many times she had been struck because the trauma was so extensive. The cause of death was a combination of multiple head injuries and suffocation by strangulation. The Gwinnett County Police began their investigation. One of the lead investigators was a man named John Laddie. The police learned that Jean Drew had been seen at a truck stop diner the night before. Employees at the diner remembered her sitting with a young man. They could describe what he looked like and what he was wearing. They remembered a gaudy ring he had on his finger. The police sent out a description of the suspect to police departments across the nation. On April 13, 1985, 6 days after the murder, police in Daytona Beach, Florida, spotted a man driving a silver-gray Ford Mustang. The man matched the description from Georgia. The police stopped him. The man was Tracy Housel. He was driving Jean Drew's car. He also had her credit cards in his possession. The police arrested him. When they searched his belongings, they also found a Social Security card belonging to a truck driver who had been found dead in Texas. That truck driver was Troy, the man Housel had killed with a hammer. Daytona Beach police questioned Housel about the Georgia murder charge. Housel confessed to killing Jean Drew. He gave a full statement about what had happened. When the police told him they also had warrants from Cass County, Iowa, Housel then confessed to attacking Gary in Iowa. He also told them about the Texas killing and the New Jersey assault. However, he was not charged with those other crimes at that time because Georgia had the strongest case. Housel was returned to Gwinnett County, Georgia, to stand trial. He was held in the Gwinnett County Jail. While he was in jail, investigator John Laddie spoke with him many times. Housel wanted special treatment. He asked for Burger King Whoppers and non-filtered cigarettes. In exchange, he would give information about other crimes. Laddie would give him the food and cigarettes, and Housel would talk. Sometimes the information was true. Law enforcement in other states were able to close cases based on what Housel said. On one occasion, Laddie asked Housel how many murders he had committed. Housel became emotional. His eyes filled with tears. His chin quivered. He said 17. Laddie believed him. However, only a few of those victims were ever identified. Housel was indicted on charges of murder, rape, motor vehicle theft, and 3 counts of credit card theft. In January 1986, a jury was selected. Before the trial began, Housel decided to plead guilty to the murder charge and the motor vehicle theft charge. The prosecution agreed to drop the rape charge and the credit card charges. However, the prosecution still sought the death penalty for the murder. Housel's lawyer, Walt Britt, advised him to plead guilty thinking it might help him avoid death. Britt was only 5 years out of law school. This was his first capital murder case. He had never handled a murder trial before. He did not investigate Housel's background. He did not know about Housel's childhood head injuries, abuse, or hypoglycemia. Housel and his mother both testified during the penalty phase that Housel had a normal upbringing. That was not true, but Britt did not know otherwise. The sentencing trial was held in February 1986. The jury had to decide whether Housel would receive life in prison or the death penalty. During this part of the trial, prosecutors presented evidence about the other crimes Housel had committed. The surviving victim from Iowa, Gary, came to court and testified about being stabbed. The surviving victim from New Jersey, Renee, also testified about being strangled and sexually assaulted. Police officers from Texas, Florida, and Georgia testified about the murder of Troy and the murder of Jean Drew. The jury heard all of this evidence. Housel's defense lawyer presented only 3 witnesses. His defense lasted less than 30 minutes. On February 7, 1986, the jury returned its verdict. Tracy Housel was sentenced to death. After the trial, new lawyers were appointed to represent Housel. They investigated his background. They found evidence of his childhood head injuries, his abusive parents, and his medical condition of hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia is a condition where blood sugar levels drop too low. Medical experts later testified that Housel had experienced an acute state of hypoglycemia at the time of the crime. Alcohol had made it worse. They said he could not tell right from wrong during that episode. 2 mental health experts also concluded that Housel suffered from brain damage and severe psychological impairments. His original lawyer, Walt Britt, admitted that he had made mistakes. Britt said that if he had known about Housel's medical condition and childhood abuse, he would never have advised him to plead guilty. Housel appealed his death sentence. His lawyers argued 2 main points. First, they said he had not received effective legal counsel because his trial lawyer was inexperienced and did not investigate his background. Second, they argued that the prosecution had violated his rights by presenting evidence of other crimes for which he was not convicted. The Georgia Supreme Court upheld his death sentence in 1987. Federal courts also rejected his appeals. The U.S. Supreme Court twice declined to review his case, most recently in February 2002. In early 2002, the state of Georgia prepared to execute Housel. A death warrant was signed. The execution was scheduled for March 12, 2002. Housel's lawyers and supporters tried to stop it. The British government became involved because Housel was born in Bermuda and held British citizenship. The United Kingdom had abolished the death penalty 40 years earlier. British Prime Minister Tony Blair wrote letters asking for clemency. Diplomats from 5 European Union nations also pleaded with Georgia to spare Housel's life. A member of the British Parliament spoke on his behalf. Sister Helen Prejean, who wrote the book Dead Man Walking, also asked the parole board to show mercy. However, the Georgia Board of Pardons and Paroles rejected the clemency request on March 11, 2002. The Georgia Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court both refused to grant a stay of execution. On March 12, 2002, Tracy Housel was taken to the death chamber at the Georgia Diagnostic and Classification Prison in Jackson, Georgia. He was allowed a final meal. He chose steak, baked potato, corn, ice cream, and a chocolate milkshake. He was visited earlier that day by his mother, his ex-wife, his 20-year-old son, and a friend. Before the execution began, Housel smiled and winked at the warden. A chaplain read the 23rd Psalm and a verse from 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17. The old is gone and the new has come. Housel recited the verses along with the chaplain. He also apologized to the family of Jean Drew. As the lethal injection drugs were administered, he sang. The words could not be heard clearly. After several minutes, his chest stopped moving. He was pronounced dead at 7:28 p.m. Tracy Lee Housel was the 764th person executed in the United States since 1976. Jean Drew's family did not attend the execution. The families of his other victims never received the full list of names that Housel had promised to provide. Story 3. James Earl Patterson was born on January 31st, 1967. He was a white male. He grew up in Virginia, though the exact town is not recorded in public documents. His family included his mother, his father, one sister, and one brother. They were a working-class family. As a young child, James did not show signs of major problems. But as he grew into his teenage years, his behavior began to change. He started to break rules. He got into fights. He also began using drugs and drinking alcohol. Cocaine became one of his preferred drugs. He would drink large amounts of alcohol as well. By the time he was a teenager, James had already collected a juvenile record. This meant he had been found guilty of minor crimes when he was under 18. The exact details of those juvenile offenses are not listed in public records, but the record shows that he was violent. He did not follow the law. He also spent time in juvenile detention centers because of his actions. James did not finish high school in a regular way. His drug use and his violent behavior got in the way of his education. He did not hold a steady job during his teenage years. Instead, he spent time with people who also used drugs and committed small crimes. He did not have a stable social life. Most of his friends were also involved in drugs and alcohol. His habits became dangerous. He would drink large amounts of alcohol. One report later stated that he could drink 1 liter of alcohol in a single night. He would also use cocaine, sometimes up to 1/8 of an ounce in one evening. These habits made him more aggressive and more likely to act without thinking. When he was still a teenager, James committed his first serious violent acts. He got into physical fights. He showed no fear of hurting others. His family tried to help him, but he did not listen. He continued to use drugs and to break the law. He also began to show a pattern of forcing himself on women, though the first official conviction for rape would come later. By age 19, James Earl Patterson had already spent time in juvenile facilities. He had not learned to control his anger or his drug use. He had no steady job. He had no real plan for his future. He simply moved from one day to the next, looking for money to buy more drugs. He was willing to steal or hurt people to get what he wanted. His family still loved him. They visited him when they could, but they could not stop him from going down a bad path. James did not see himself as someone who needed to change. He thought only about his next drink and his next dose of cocaine. Then, just before he turned 20 years old, his life took a darker turn. He met a woman through one of her daughters. He had been partying with that daughter. That woman was Joyce Sneed Aldridge. He saw her only in passing. He did not know her well. But that brief meeting would lead to a chain of events that changed many lives forever. James Earl Patterson was 20 years old on October 11th, 1987. He had been drinking alcohol and using cocaine that day. He drank about 1 liter of alcohol. He also used about 1/8 of an ounce of cocaine. The drugs and alcohol made him feel angry and desperate. He needed more money to buy more drugs. He thought about Joyce Sneed Aldridge. She was 56 years old. She was a white female. He had met her only in passing while partying with one of her daughters. He did not know Joyce well, but he knew where she lived. He decided to go to her house to steal money from her. That was his plan. He wanted to rob her so he could buy more cocaine. The crime happened shortly before midnight on October 11th, 1987. Patterson went to Joyce Aldridge's home. He first tried to enter through a basement window. That window was locked. He could not open it. While he was looking around the yard, he dropped a utility knife. He then had to look for that knife in the dark. While Patterson was in the yard, Joyce let her dog outside. She did not know Patterson was there. He saw his chance. He went to the front door and knocked. He made up a lie. He told Joyce that he had lost his car keys. He asked if he could borrow a flashlight to search for them. Joyce believed his lie. She opened the door. As soon as the door opened, Patterson forced his way inside. He pushed her. He kicked the door shut behind them. He told her to give him her purse. He pushed her into the bedroom to get the purse. She gave him her purse. He opened it. Inside, he found only a handful of coins. There was no paper money. There were no valuable items. This made Patterson very angry. He later said he became even more violent because she had so little money. His rage took over. He decided to rape her. He tore strips of cloth from the bed linens. He used those strips to tie her hands behind her back. Then he raped her. After raping her, Patterson decided he could not leave her alive. He later explained that he was not going to leave any witnesses behind. He went into the kitchen. He opened a drawer that contained knives. He took one of Joyce's own kitchen knives. Then he went back to where she was. Patterson stabbed Joyce Aldridge 3 times in the abdomen. The knife went deep into her body. He then left her on the floor. He went back outside to look for the utility knife he had dropped earlier. He thought she would die from those 3 stab wounds. He was wrong. Joyce Aldridge was badly hurt, but she was not dead. She got up. She went to the telephone. She pulled the phone cord to its full length. At around 11:35 p.m., she called the police. She told the operator that she had been raped and stabbed. Then she tried to call her son. She dialed a number, but it was the wrong number. The call did not go through. She tried to dial again. While Joyce was on the phone trying to reach her son for a second time, Patterson came back inside. He had not found his utility knife. He decided to return to the house to make sure she was really gone. He saw that the bedroom door was shut. He kicked the door open. He saw the telephone cord leading into the bathroom. He forced the bathroom door open. Joyce came out of the bathroom. Patterson saw that she was still alive. He hit her with the knife again. He stabbed her many more times. In total, he stabbed her 14 more times that second time. He stabbed her in the neck 8 times. He stabbed her in the upper back 4 times. He stabbed her in the chest once. He also added more stab wounds to her abdomen. 2 of the stab wounds cut her aorta, which is a major blood vessel. Those wounds were fatal. Joyce fell down against the wall. Her blood was on the bed, on the floor, on the phone, and on the bathroom door. Her dress had been ripped from the neck. The ligatures made from bed cloth were still tied to her right wrist. She died on the floor of her bathroom. Patterson ran out of the house through the front door. As he left, police cars were arriving. Someone had called them after Joyce's phone call. The police saw someone leaving the area, but they did not stop him. Patterson ran to his car, which was parked about 1 block away. He got in and drove away. He escaped. Back at the house, the police found the front door open. They saw that a screen had been knocked out of the bathroom window at the back of the house. They announced themselves. No one answered. They went inside. They found Joyce Aldridge's body on the bathroom floor. Her body was partially undressed. Emergency medical workers tried to save her, but she was already dead. The police saw signs of a struggle. A kitchen chair was knocked over. The knife drawer was left open. Joyce's eyeglasses were on the floor. Her bedroom door had been kicked open. Footprints were on that door. The same kind of footprints were found in blood on the bedroom floor. Her purse had been dumped out. Dresser drawers were open. A nightstand was knocked over. There was a large amount of blood on the bed and pillows. The telephone cord had been pulled from the wall. The doorknob to the bathroom had been pulled off. Joyce's blood was on the phone, on the doorknob, and on the window screen latch. The medical examiner later counted 17 stab wounds in total. 3 from the first attack, 14 from the second attack. The wounds were between 2 and 6 inches deep. There were also defensive wounds on Joyce's body, which meant she tried to fight back. The police collected evidence from the scene. They found seminal fluid from the victim's rectum and vagina. They also found a semen stain on the bed. They preserved this evidence for future testing. But at the time, they did not know who the attacker was. Patterson had left no name. He had no criminal record as an adult yet that would link him to the scene. So the case went unsolved for many years. 1 year after killing Joyce Aldridge, Patterson committed another violent crime. For 11 years after Joyce Aldridge was killed, no one knew who had done it. The police had kept the evidence from the crime scene. They had preserved the seminal fluid, the semen stain from the bed, and other samples. But without a suspect to compare it to, the evidence could not identify anyone. In 1988, 1 year after Joyce's murder, Patterson committed another rape. He asked 2 women for a ride home from a party. When the driver got out of the car, Patterson shoved her to the ground. He got back into the car. He broke the handle of the passenger door so the other woman could not escape. He punched her in the face. Then he drove to another location and raped her. He was caught and convicted for that rape. He received a sentence of 25 years in prison. As part of Virginia state law, convicted felons had to give a blood sample. Patterson gave his blood sample after his rape conviction. That sample was entered into the Virginia DNA databank. The date was around 1990 or 1991. Patterson was sent to serve his 25-year sentence at the Greensville Correctional Center. In 1998, the Virginia Division of Forensic Science decided to resubmit the old evidence from the Joyce Aldridge murder. They ran new DNA tests. The laboratory compared the DNA from the crime scene to the DNA profiles stored in the state database. The database held about 175,000 convicted felons. The test produced a match. The DNA from Joyce Aldridge's body and her bed matched the DNA of James Earl Patterson. This was called a cold hit because the police were not actively looking at Patterson as a suspect. The database found him on its own. This was the first time in the United States that a cold hit from a DNA database led to an execution. The police obtained a search warrant for a fresh sample of Patterson's blood. They took a new sample from him in prison. The new test confirmed the match. The probability of finding another person with the same DNA profile was less than 1 in 5.5 billion. That meant the match was certain. In March 1999, investigators went to see Patterson in prison. They showed him badges. Patterson later said that seeing the badges took his breath away. He said the day of judgment had met him. At first, he denied knowing Joyce Aldridge. He denied ever being in her house. But in March 2000, Patterson agreed to talk. He made a request. He wanted to see his family at the prison. The police arranged a family visit. After that visit, Patterson gave a full confession. He spoke to an officer on videotape. He told the truth about breaking in, robbing her, tying her hands, raping her, stabbing her 3 times, leaving, coming back, and stabbing her 14 more times. He admitted everything. Patterson's own lawyer told him not to plead guilty. The lawyer wanted to fight the case, but Patterson refused to listen. 2 different psychologists examined Patterson. Both said he was competent to make his own decisions. He understood what he was doing. Patterson told his lawyer not to present any evidence on his behalf. He did not want any arguments to save his life. On June 15, 2000, Patterson stood before Prince George County Circuit Judge James F. Dalton, Jr. He pleaded guilty to capital murder. He also pleaded guilty to rape, abduction with intent to defile, and forcible sodomy. In court, Patterson spoke. He looked at the families. He said he had wrecked lives. He said he was sorry. He said, "I beg you to give me the death sentence." He told the judge that if he received a life sentence, he could not promise that he might not spark out and ruin more lives. The judge said the death penalty was not something he could give just because Patterson asked for it. But the judge looked at the facts. The crime was vile. Joyce Aldridge did not die quickly. She was stabbed, left to suffer, then stabbed many more times. The attack was savage and methodical. The judge also looked at Patterson's history. He had committed another rape after the murder. He had 14 disciplinary offenses in prison, including fights, assaults, and drug possession. The judge found 2 reasons for the death penalty: the vileness of the crime and the fact that Patterson would be a future danger to society. The judge sentenced Patterson to death. He also gave Patterson life sentences for the rape, abduction, and sodomy charges. After the sentence was read, Patterson thanked the judge. He nodded and smiled slightly at his family as guards led him away. Patterson had the right to appeal. That means he could ask higher courts to review his case. But Patterson told his lawyer he did not want to appeal. The Virginia Supreme Court sent the case back to the trial court to make sure Patterson was making that choice freely. A hearing was held on January 4, 2001. Patterson signed a written waiver. He said he did not want his case reviewed for any errors. He gave up his appeal on purpose. The judge found that Patterson's decision was knowing, voluntary, and intelligent. While on death row, Patterson spoke to a reporter by telephone. He said, "The penalty fit the crime. I was responsible, and I want to pay the ultimate price." He also spoke about DNA testing. He said it was a good thing because it condemned people who needed to be condemned and freed people who needed to be freed. He mentioned Marvin Anderson, a man who had been wrongly imprisoned for 15 years for a rape he did not commit. Patterson had worked beside Anderson in prison. When Anderson was exonerated by DNA evidence, Patterson said he jumped for joy and praised the Lord. The family of Joyce Aldridge watched the legal process. Her son, Garrison E. Aldridge, said the family had wondered for many years who killed their mother and why. He said the only answer they could find was that it was senseless. His sister, Karen Aldridge Bornstein, said the family's prayers had been answered, but the hurt, anger, and grief came back. She said the feelings of loneliness and emptiness had never gone away. No one asked the governor to stop the execution. Virginia Governor Mark R. Warner issued a statement. He said Patterson was found competent by 2 psychiatric evaluations. He said there were no legal challenges. He declined to intervene. On March 14, 2002, James Earl Patterson was 35 years old. He was taken to the Greensville Correctional Center in Jarrett, Virginia. He was strapped to a gurney. His last meal was 5 cheese turkey burgers with lettuce, tomato, onion, ketchup, and mustard, French fries with lots of mayo and ketchup on the side, a tossed salad with French dressing, cooked apples, and sweet tea. His final words were, "I want it to be known that my heart goes out to the Aldridge family and all that I put them through. I pray that they will all find God as I have found him. I am at peace now and ready to meet my Maker. God bless each and every one of you who is here tonight." At 9:10 p.m., the lethal chemicals flowed into his arms. He was pronounced dead. James Earl Patterson became the 765th person executed in the United States since 1976, the first person executed in Virginia in 2002, and the first person in the nation executed based on a DNA cold hit from a state database. The Aldridge family witnessed the execution from a separate room. Patterson's mother, father, sister, brother, and 2 daughters visited him earlier that day. There were no protesters outside the prison. In the years after the execution, Joyce Sneed Aldridge's name was remembered as a woman who tried to fight back, who called for help, and whose murder was solved 11 years later by the very science that Patterson himself came to respect. Story 4. Daniel Lee Zirkle was born on August 10, 1968. Not much information is available about his early childhood or his parents. He grew up in Virginia, but the details of his schooling and teenage years are not recorded in public records. When Daniel was 20 years old, in 1988, he committed his first serious crime. He entered a store where a woman named Nancy Berry worked as a cashier. Daniel showed her a butcher knife and demanded money. Nancy Berry gave him money from the cash register, and Daniel left the store. He was later caught and pleaded guilty to armed robbery. This was his first conviction. After that crime, Daniel stayed out of major trouble for several years. Around 1992, he began a relationship with a woman named Barbara Shiflett. Barbara had a young daughter from a previous relationship. That daughter's name was Jessica Shiflett. Jessica was born around 1985. Daniel and Barbara lived together in Rockingham County, Virginia. During their relationship, Barbara gave birth to a daughter. The baby girl was named Christina Zirkel. Christina was born around 1995. Daniel was Christina's biological father. The four of them lived together as a family for about 6 years. Daniel acted as a stepfather to Jessica. The relationship between Daniel and Barbara was not peaceful. Over time, Daniel became abusive toward Barbara. The abuse happened many times. Barbara did not feel safe with Daniel. In early 1999, Barbara decided to end the relationship. On April 3, 1999, Barbara took her 2 daughters to spend the night at her sister's house. Her sister's name was Peggy Shiflett. Later that night, Barbara returned to her home alone. When she walked inside, Daniel was there in her bed. He jumped up and bumped into her chest. He said he wanted his daughters home right away. Barbara and Daniel started to argue. Barbara picked up a telephone to call 911 for help. Daniel pulled the telephone out of her hand and pushed her against a fish tank. Barbara tried to use another telephone. Daniel pulled that phone away too and pushed her onto a sofa. Barbara then went into Jessica's bedroom and used that phone to call the police. The police arrived at the home. After they left, Barbara went back to her sister's house. Daniel called Peggy's house. Peggy answered and hung up. Daniel called again. Barbara spoke to him on the phone. Daniel said he wanted his daughters home. Barbara said no. Daniel then asked her if she wanted a war. He said, "You will pay." Because of this incident, Barbara went to court and obtained a protective order. A protective order is a legal paper that tells a person to stay away from someone. Police officers served the order to Daniel that same night. The order said Daniel must stay away from Barbara and her home. The next day, Barbara and her sister went back to Barbara's home to get some of their things. While they were inside, Daniel entered the house and attacked Barbara. He then ran away. Police arrived again. Barbara got arrest warrants against Daniel for assault and battery, and for violating the protective order. Even after the warrants were issued, Daniel kept calling Barbara on the telephone. During one call, he told her she would be sorry and she would pay. Daniel was arrested and convicted of assault and battery and violating the protective order. A judge sent him to serve time in the Rockingham County Jail. He was ordered to stay in jail for 2 months. He entered the jail in May 1999. While he was in jail, he met another inmate named Ricky Lee Dean. Daniel talked to Ricky about Barbara and her daughters. Ricky later said that Daniel told him he was going to take care of all 3 of them when he got out. Ricky said Daniel told him that if he could not have them, no one else would. Daniel served his 2 months in jail. He was released from the Rockingham County Jail sometime before August 2nd, 1999. After Daniel was released from jail, he still wanted to hurt Barbara Shiflett. He was angry that she had ended their relationship. He was angry that she had obtained protective orders against him. He was angry that he had been sent to jail. He decided to get revenge by taking away the people Barbara loved the most, her daughters. On the morning of August 2nd, 1999, Daniel went to his mother's home. He took a kitchen knife from his mother's house. The knife had a serrated blade. Serrated means the edge has small teeth like a saw. Daniel took this knife with him because he planned to use it as a weapon. Around 2:30 in the afternoon on that same day, Daniel called Barbara at her workplace in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Barbara was at her job. When she answered the phone, Daniel did not ask her anything or try to talk to her nicely. Instead, he said these words, "Live in hell, bitch." Then he hung up. This call was meant to scare her and to let her know something bad was coming. After making that call, Daniel drove to Barbara's home in Mount Crawford, Virginia. Barbara was not at home, because she was working. Jessica Shiflett, who was 14 years old, was babysitting her little sister Christina. Christina was 4 years old. Barbara had left the two girls alone at the house with Jessica in charge. Daniel entered the home. The exact way he got inside is not fully described, but he broke in. Once he was inside, Jessica saw him. Jessica knew that Daniel was not supposed to be there because of the protective order. She told him that he was not allowed to be in the home. Daniel then told Jessica that he wanted to take Christina with him. Jessica refused to let him take her little sister. She tried to protect Christina. Because Jessica refused, Daniel took out the serrated kitchen knife he had taken from his mother's house. He used the knife to stab Jessica in the neck. He stabbed her multiple times. The autopsy later showed that Jessica had 5 stab wounds on her neck. 2 wounds were on the left side of her neck. Those wounds went deep into her neck, about 3 to 5 inches deep. They cut through a major artery, a major vein, and part of her windpipe. Either one of those 2 wounds would have caused her to die within seconds or a few minutes. The other stab wounds were on the front of her neck and went into the muscles and the thyroid gland. Jessica fell to the floor of her bedroom. She died there. Daniel had killed her because she stood in his way. After killing Jessica, Daniel took Christina from the home. Christina was his biological daughter, but he did not spare her. He took her with him, and they left the house. Daniel then drove with Christina toward Page County, Virginia. While he was driving, he stopped somewhere to make another phone call. He called Barbara again at her job. But this call happened after Barbara had already left work. So the details of that second call are not part of the main record. The key point is that Daniel was now driving away with Christina. Daniel drove to a place in the George Washington National Forest. The specific location was a mountain overlook on a path called Storybook Trail. This was a paved trail that ended at a wooden deck area overlooking the mountains. It was a remote place where not many people would be around. When Daniel arrived at that overlook, he got out of the car with Christina. He still had the same serrated kitchen knife. Then he stabbed Christina in the neck. The autopsy later showed that Christina had a cut wound under her chin and a large stab wound on the front of her neck. The stab wound went about 2 3/4 inches deep. It went through her windpipe and cut her spinal cord in half. This required a lot of force. The wound caused her to die within a few minutes. The autopsy also showed that Christina had bruises and scrapes on her body. She had abrasions on her left shoulder, a bruise on the back of her right neck, a bruise on her right abdomen, scrapes on her right hand and right knee, and a bruise on her lower right leg. There was also a pressure mark on her left knee. These injuries showed that Christina struggled and fought back while Daniel was stabbing her. She was only 4 years old, but she tried to defend herself. After Christina was dead, Daniel tried to kill himself. He used the same knife to cut his own throat. He made a deep wound on his neck. Then he lay down on the wooden deck area. He placed Christina's body on his chest. His left arm was over her body. The knife was lying next to his right hand on the ground. Daniel was still alive, but he had lost a lot of blood from his self-inflicted wound. While Daniel was driving to the mountain and then killing Christina, Barbara had already started to worry. After Daniel called her at work and said, "Live in hell, bitch," she became frightened. She left her job around 4:30 in the afternoon. She went to a magistrate to try to get another protective order against Daniel because he had violated the existing order by calling her and coming near her home. Later that evening, Barbara returned to her workplace. While she was there, she learned that Daniel's mother had called her. The call was urgent. Barbara called Daniel's mother back. Daniel's mother told Barbara that Daniel had taken Christina. Barbara immediately left work and drove home to check on Jessica. While driving, Barbara used her cell phone to call her home phone. She hoped Jessica would answer. No one picked up the phone. When Barbara arrived at her home in Mount Crawford, she went inside. She started calling out for Christina and Jessica. No one answered. She went to Jessica's bedroom. The door was closed. Barbara opened the door. She saw Jessica's body lying on the floor. Barbara called 911 right away. Police officers arrived at the house. They examined Jessica's body. They told Barbara that Jessica was dead. The officers also told Barbara that Christina had been killed. Barbara did not know that yet, but the police had already received information about what happened at the mountain. By the end of that day, August 2nd, 1999, both Jessica Shiflett, age 14, and Christina Zirkle, age 4, were dead. Daniel had killed them both with the same knife within hours of each other. While Barbara Shiflett was calling 911 from her home after finding Jessica's body, other police officers were already on their way to the mountain overlook in Page County. The police had received information that a man had taken his daughter to a trail and had threatened to commit suicide. An investigator from the Page County Sheriff's Department, Peter Monteleone, was sent to the Storybook Trail. He walked down the paved path. When he reached the wooden deck area at the end of the trail, he saw fresh blood stains on the wood. He then saw the upper part of a man's body. He also saw a child's leg. The child's body was lying face down on the man's chest. The man's left arm was over the child. Next to the man's right hand, lying on the ground, was a knife. Investigator Monteleone checked to see if the man was alive. Daniel Zirkle was still alive. Monteleone kicked the knife away from Daniel's hand, so Daniel could not use it again. Monteleone then checked the child for a pulse. There was no pulse. The child was dead. A rescue squad member named Michael Todd Fultz arrived at the scene. He checked Christina's vital signs and officially pronounced her dead. Daniel had a deep, self-inflicted wound on his neck. He was still bleeding. Emergency workers took Daniel to a hospital for medical treatment. While Daniel was in the hospital recovering from his neck wound, police officers went to speak with him. A detective from the Rockingham County Sheriff's Department, Daniel Comer, interviewed Daniel at the hospital. Daniel told the detective that he had taken the knife from his mother's home. He said he used that same knife to kill Jessica and to kill Christina. He gave a full confession. Daniel survived his self-inflicted wound. After he recovered enough to leave the hospital, he was arrested and taken to jail. He was held in the Rockingham County Jail while awaiting trial. After Daniel was in jail, another inmate named Ronald J. Jackson was incarcerated with him. About 1 or 2 weeks after Daniel arrived, a jail officer came to tell Daniel that the officer was going to donate money to a car wash fundraiser. The fundraiser was to pay for gravestones for Jessica and Christina. When the officer explained this to Daniel, Daniel responded by saying, "Tell that bitch I said checkmate." Then Daniel ran his thumb across his own throat and looked directly at the officer. This showed that Daniel still had no remorse and was proud of what he had done. Daniel was charged with multiple crimes. In Page County, he was charged with the capital murder of Christina Zirkle. The law said this was capital murder because Christina was under the age of 14 and Daniel was over the age of 21. In Rockingham County, he was charged with 2 counts of capital murder for killing Jessica Shiflett. 1 count was for killing Jessica as part of the same act or transaction in which he killed Christina. The second count was for killing Jessica within 3 years of killing another person, Christina. He was also charged with breaking and entering into Barbara's home during the daytime with the intent to commit murder while armed with a deadly weapon. Daniel decided that he did not want a jury trial. He also decided that he wanted to be sentenced to death. He told his lawyers not to present any evidence that might save him from execution. His lawyers disagreed with him and advised him against this, but Daniel insisted. He was found to be mentally competent. A judge questioned Daniel many times to make sure he understood what he was doing. Each time, Daniel said he understood and that he wanted to plead guilty and receive the death penalty. In July 2000, Daniel appeared in Page County Circuit Court. He waived his right to a jury trial. He pleaded guilty to the capital murder of Christina. The judge accepted his plea. During the penalty phase, Daniel instructed his lawyers not to present any mitigation evidence. Mitigation evidence is information that could convince a judge to give a lighter sentence, such as life in prison instead of death. The Commonwealth presented evidence of Daniel's prior crimes, including the armed robbery in 1988 and a marijuana possession conviction in 1999. The judge found that Daniel would continue to be a threat to society and that his crime was vile and horrible. On August 28, 2000, the judge sentenced Daniel to death for the murder of Christina. In August 2000, Daniel appeared in Rockingham County Circuit Court. He again waived his right to a jury and pleaded guilty to the capital murder charges for killing Jessica. He again told his lawyers not to present any mitigation evidence. The judge questioned him repeatedly. Daniel said he wanted the death sentence. The Commonwealth presented evidence. The judge found that Daniel would commit future violent acts and that his conduct was vile. The judge sentenced Daniel to death for the murder of Jessica. Daniel received a third death sentence for killing within 3 years of committing another murder. He also received a life sentence for the breaking and entering charge. After his convictions and death sentences, Daniel had the right to appeal. An appeal is a request for a higher court to review the case. Daniel told his lawyers not to file any appeals. He did not want anyone to try to save his life. The Virginia Supreme Court still reviewed his cases because state law required them to review all death sentences. In 2001, the Virginia Supreme Court affirmed or upheld both death sentences. The court found that Daniel had voluntarily and intelligently waived his rights. Even though Daniel did not want to appeal, the court still confirmed that the evidence proved he was guilty and that the death sentences were proper. After all appeals were exhausted, an execution date was set. Daniel did not ask for clemency. Clemency is when a governor reduces a sentence or grants mercy. Governor Mark Warner of Virginia reviewed the case. The governor issued a statement saying there were no legal challenges to the execution and that he expected the sentence to be carried out. On April 2, 2002, Daniel Lee Zirkle was executed at the Greensville Correctional Center in Jarrett, Virginia. The method was lethal injection. He was 33 years old. Before his execution, Daniel was offered a final meal. He asked for no meal. He was led into the death chamber shortly before 9 p.m. He looked pale and was shaking slightly, but he was calm. He was strapped to a gurney. He then spoke his final words. He said he was sorry to everyone who had been hurt in the tragedy. He thanked his family, his lawyers, and his preacher for their love and support. He said he wanted his soulmate Gracie to know that he loved her and would always be with her. Then he said, "Thank you, Jesus." He exhaled deeply and became still. He was pronounced dead at 9:07 p.m. Barbara Shiflett did not watch the execution. She sent a family friend named Lisa to witness on her behalf. Barbara said she just needed to know that justice had been done. She said she had tried to get help 3 years before the murders, but no one stopped Daniel in time. After the execution, she said she believed Daniel went to hell. Daniel Lee Zirkle was the 85th person executed in Virginia since the U.S. Supreme Court allowed the death penalty to resume in 1976. He was the second person executed in Virginia in 2002. His body was turned over to his family. The two girls, Jessica Shiflett and Christina Zirkle, were buried with gravestones paid for by community fundraisers. Their mother, Barbara Shiflett, continued to live with the loss of both her daughters for the rest of her life. The case of Daniel Lee Zirkle ended on April 2, 2002, when he was put to death for the murders he committed. Story 5. Paul W. Kreutzer was born on February 22, 1972, in Gravette, Arkansas. His birth parents did not raise him. Instead, he was adopted by a married couple. The adoptive family lived in Pike County, Missouri. This county is near a small town called Louisiana, Missouri. Paul grew up in that rural area with his adoptive parents. Not much is known about Paul's early childhood or his time in school. But when he became a young adult, he started to break the law. His actions led him to Illinois. On April 26, 1991, Paul was convicted in Adams County, Illinois. He was found guilty of 3 separate counts of burglary. Burglary means entering a building without permission to steal something. He was also found guilty of 1 count of conspiracy to commit robbery. Conspiracy means he planned with at least 1 other person to commit a crime. Robbery means taking property from a person by force or threat. For these crimes, the court sentenced Paul to prison. He received a sentence of 3.5 years for the burglaries. He also received a concurrent sentence of 3 years for the conspiracy charge. Concurrent means both sentences were served at the same time. Paul was sent to the Illinois Department of Corrections. He served time in an Illinois prison. In May 1992, Paul was released on parole. Parole means he was allowed to leave prison early under supervision. After his release, he returned to Pike County, Missouri. He went to live with his adoptive parents. Their home was located less than 1/4 mile from another family's house. That family was the Hemphill family. The mother of that family was a 36-year-old woman named Louise Hemphill. Later in 1992, after Paul had moved back home, he went to the Hemphill property. He went there because he wanted to look at a horse that was for sale. That was how Paul first met Louise Hemphill. They spoke briefly at that time. Nothing else happened between them during that visit. In the last week of August 1992, Paul was in Columbia, Missouri. Columbia is a larger town not far from Pike County. While there, Paul was arrested. The charge was indecent exposure. Indecent exposure means showing one's private body parts in public in a way that offends others. Paul was taken into custody, but he was later released. He went back to his adoptive parents' home. Paul did not have a regular job during this time. He lived with his parents and spent his days in the local area. He had a car. He often drove to different places. He did not have many close friends. He kept to himself. His past prison time for burglary and conspiracy was known to his family. But he did not talk openly about those crimes. This was the life Paul Kreutzer had built by the end of August 1992. He was 20 years old. He had a criminal record. He was out on parole. He lived near the Hemphill family. And he had recently been arrested again for indecent exposure. The morning of September 2nd, 1992, began like any other day for Louise Hemphill. She was 36 years old. She lived with her husband and their 3 children in Pike County, near Louisiana, Missouri. On this morning, her husband left for work. Her 2 oldest children left for school. Louise then got in her car and drove her youngest child to school. After dropping off the child, she returned to her home. Later that morning, Louise's brother came to visit her at her house. He spoke with her. Then he left. He was the last person to see Louise alive. At that time, she was still safe. Louise had a daily habit. She wrote a list of chores she needed to do around the house. Next to each chore, she wrote the time by which she wanted to finish that chore. On this day, her list showed a chore for 10:30 a.m. That chore was crossed out, meaning she had completed it. The next chore was listed for 11 a.m. That chore was not crossed out. This meant she never got to finish that chore. On the same morning, Paul Kreutzer was active in the area. He drove his car to several places near the Hemphill home. One person saw him pull his car into a driveway that was next to the school where Louise had just dropped off her youngest child. Paul then went to 2 different schools in the area. At each school, he offered to speak to students. He said he wanted to warn them about the dangers of drugs and alcohol. The schools did not let him speak to the students. At 9:41 a.m., Paul went to a store in Louisiana, Missouri. He bought a BB gun. A BB gun is a type of air gun that shoots small metal balls called BBs. After buying the gun, he tried to buy BBs to put in the gun, but he did not have enough money to buy the BBs. So he left the store with only the gun. Paul then drove to the Hemphill house. He went to the front door. He knocked or rang the bell. Louise came to the door. Paul asked for Louise's husband. Louise told Paul that her husband was not at home. She then tried to close the door, but Paul pushed his way inside. He forced himself into the house. Once inside, Paul attacked Louise. He used duct tape to bind her. Duct tape is a strong silver-colored tape. He wrapped pieces of duct tape around her ankles. He also put duct tape on the bed in one of the upstairs bedrooms. That bedroom belonged to Louise's 2 daughters. The tape was meant to keep Louise from escaping. Paul then sexually assaulted Louise. After the assault, Louise managed to get free, or Paul let her go. She ran into the master bedroom. She tried to lock the door. Paul kicked the door open. His boot left marks on the door. The lock broke and fell to the floor. Louise ran into the master bathroom. Paul followed her. In the bathroom, Paul took a knife. The knife was a hunting knife that the Hemphill family kept in their kitchen. Paul used this knife to stab Louise in the neck. The stab cut open a jugular vein. Blood came out. Louise ran from the bathroom back into the master bedroom. She was bleeding. She left drops of blood and pieces of duct tape on the floor as she moved. Paul kept chasing her. Paul then picked up a baseball bat. The bat belonged to Louise's son. It was kept in the son's bedroom. Paul struck Louise in the head with the bat. He hit her at least 3 times. The blows were so hard that they broke a bone in her neck. Her brain tissue began to leak from the wounds. These head injuries would have killed her on their own. But Paul did not stop. He took a belt and looped it around Louise's neck. He pulled the belt tight and strangled her. Strangulation means cutting off the air to the lungs by squeezing the neck. This took between 3 and 4 minutes. For the first 1 or 2 minutes, Louise may still have been conscious. She would have felt herself losing air. Eventually, she stopped breathing. The strangulation was the immediate cause of death. After Louise was dead, Paul left her body on the floor of her son's bedroom. Her body was naked. He took her purse from the house. Inside the purse was her wallet. He then left the Hemphill home. Paul drove away. He had the BB gun he bought that morning. He had the duct tape. He had bloody gloves. He had Louise's purse. He also had her money. Later that day, he checked into a motel room. He brought his belongings and his clothes with him. The jeans he wore had blood on them. The victims in this crime were Louise Hemphill and her family. Louise lost her life. Her husband lost his wife. Her 3 children lost their mother. They did not know what had happened yet. But by the end of the day on September 2nd, 1992, they would find out. Around 4 p.m. on September 2nd, 1992, the 2 Hemphill daughters, Janie and Jessie, arrived home from school. They entered the house. Jessie went upstairs. She walked into her brother Luke's bedroom. There, she saw her mother's naked body lying on the floor. Jessie ran to the phone. She called her father. He was at work. He drove home immediately. When he arrived, he saw the body. He called 911 for emergency help. Police officers came to the house. They saw the body and the injuries. They also saw the baseball bat, the belt, the duct tape pieces, and the knife on or near the body. They saw that the bedroom door had been kicked in. They found a .22 caliber pistol in a closet in the upstairs hallway. The pistol was not loaded. The ammunition was normally kept in a bathroom near the master bedroom. The police found the ammunition there, separate from the gun. This suggested that Louise may have tried to get the gun to defend herself, but could not load it in time. The police also found Louise's daily chore list. They saw that the 10:30 a.m. chore was crossed off, but the 11 a.m. chore was not. This helped them estimate when the attack happened. They knew Louise's brother had seen her alive after 10:30 a.m. so the attack likely occurred after 10:30 a.m. and before 11 a.m. That same evening, police began looking for suspects. They learned that Paul Kreutzer lived nearby. They also learned that Paul had been seen in the area that morning. Officers located Paul at a motel. They arrested him later that evening. When they arrested him, they searched his car. Inside the car, they found Louise Hemphill's purse and wallet. They also found a pair of gloves with human blood on them. They found a roll of duct tape. They found the BB gun Paul had bought that morning. They also found a package of BBs and a receipt showing he bought the BBs after he had left the store earlier. He must have returned or found money elsewhere. The receipt proved he had the BBs. The police searched the motel room where Paul had been staying. In that room, they found a pair of jeans with human bloodstains on them. They also found a second receipt for the BB gun purchase. Officers took Paul's boots from him. The boots matched the boot prints found on the kicked-in bedroom door. Officers also took $97 in cash from Paul's person. That money likely came from Louise's purse. The police collected evidence from the Hemphill house. They took samples of semen found on the bed cover. They also took semen found on Louise's face and pubic area. They sent these samples for DNA testing. The DNA results came back. The semen matched Paul Kreutzer's DNA. The scientists calculated that this DNA pattern occurs once in every 150,000 times in the Caucasian population and once in every 500,000 times in the African American population. This made the match extremely strong. The police also found a hair on a pair of sweatpants in the bedroom. That hair was consistent with Paul's pubic hair. It did not match any member of the Hemphill family. Bloodstains on the bed cover and on the sweatpants matched both Louise's blood and Paul's blood. Paul was charged with first-degree murder. His trial began on March 21, 1994. The trial was moved to Callaway County. This was done because the crime was well known in Pike County, and the court wanted a fair jury. During the trial, Paul's lawyers used a defense called diminished capacity. This means they argued that Paul had a mental disease or defect. They claimed this mental problem stopped him from being able to deliberate or plan the murder with a cool mind. A psychologist testified that Paul suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder and borderline personality disorder. The psychologist said these disorders came from physical and emotional abuse Paul suffered in his past. The jury heard all the evidence. They heard about the forced entry, the duct tape, the stabbing, the baseball bat blows, the strangulation, the semen DNA match, and the stolen purse. They also heard from a woman who Paul helped on the night of the murder. That woman had a flat tire on the road. Paul stopped and helped her. His lawyers used this to show he was not a monster. His former landlord and her daughter also spoke well of him. On March 26, 1994, the jury returned a verdict. They found Paul W. Kreutzer guilty of first-degree murder. Then the same jury had to decide the punishment. They could choose life in prison or death. The jury found two aggravating factors. Aggravating factors are reasons to give a harsher punishment. First, Paul committed the murder while also committing burglary. He forced his way into the house, which is burglary. Second, Paul committed the murder to get money or something of value from Louise. He stole her purse and money. The jury recommended the death penalty. On June 6, 1994, the judge denied Paul's motion for a new trial. The judge sentenced Paul to death. Paul then began the appeals process. On November 29, 1994, he filed a motion for post-conviction relief. This is a request to a court to overturn the conviction or sentence. A circuit court denied that motion on July 17, 1995. Paul appealed to the Missouri Supreme Court. On August 20, 1996, the Missouri Supreme Court affirmed his conviction and sentence. He filed a petition to the United States Supreme Court. On January 13, 1997, the U.S. Supreme Court denied his petition. He then filed a habeas corpus petition in federal district court on January 27, 1998. Habeas corpus is a way for a prisoner to challenge the legality of his detention. The district court denied the petition on January 6, 1999. He appealed to the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals. On November 15, 2000, the Eighth Circuit affirmed the denial. He petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court again. On November 1, 2001, the U.S. Supreme Court denied his final petition. On March 11, 2002, the Missouri Supreme Court set Paul's execution date for April 10, 2002. On that date, Paul W. Kreutzer was executed by lethal injection at a Missouri prison. He was 30 years old. He did not give any final words. His final meal was a grilled ham and cheese sandwich, onion rings, cheesecake, and milk. After the execution, members of Louise Hemphill's family spoke to reporters. Her widower, Craig Hemphill, spoke along with Louise's sister and brother. The family had waited nearly 10 years for justice. Paul Kreutzer was the 767th murderer executed in the United States since 1976, and the 57th murderer executed in Missouri since that year. Louise Hemphill's 3 children grew up without their mother, and her husband lived the rest of his life without his wife. Story 6. Jose Santellán, Sr. was born on March 8, 1962 in Texas. Not much is known to the public about his parents or his childhood. He grew up in a poor family, but the records do not say exactly where or how he lived as a young child. What is known starts when he became a young adult. In 1986, when Jose was 24 years old, he choked a girlfriend during an argument. He later admitted to doing this. This was a sign of violence, but no arrest was recorded for that incident at the time. Then, in March 1987, Jose was arrested for burglary. A court gave him 5 years of probation. That meant he could stay out of prison if he followed the rules and did not break the law again. But only 4 months later, in July 1987, Jose got into a fight with another man. He beat the man badly. He was convicted of assault. Because he broke the rules of his probation, the judge took away the probation. Jose was sentenced to 2 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. He went to prison for the first time. After 1 year, in 1988, he was released on parole. Parole meant he was out early, but still watched by the state. Jose did not stay out of trouble for long. In September 1988, only 1 month after his parole began, he was arrested again. This time it was for criminal trespass. The incident involved a verbal fight with his girlfriend. He got into a loud argument with her in a place where he was not allowed to be. A little more than 1 month later, in October 1988, Jose was arrested for 2 more crimes: assault and resisting arrest. He fought with someone, and then fought with the police who tried to take him in. Because of these new arrests for trespass, assault, and resisting arrest, Jose was sent back to prison in April 1989. He did not get a new trial for these acts. Instead, his parole was revoked, and he was returned to the Texas prison system. In May 1989, he was released again, this time to mandatory supervision. That is a type of parole where the state watches you until your original sentence ends. In July 1990, his sentence was finally finished, and he was discharged from state supervision. After that, Jose moved away from Texas. He went first to a town called Fredericksburg, and then he moved to the state of Michigan. But moving did not change his behavior. In November 1990, he was arrested for shoplifting a pack of cigarettes. That was a small crime, but only a few days later, he was arrested for much more serious crimes: breaking and entering into a building, assault with a dangerous weapon, and carrying a concealed weapon. While Jose was sitting in jail in Michigan waiting for his court date, he broke a window. He was charged with malicious destruction of police property. He also took part in a violent escape attempt. He tried to get out of the jail by force. That attempt did not work, but it added more charges. In July 1991, a Michigan court convicted Jose of 3 crimes: escaping from jail through violence, assault of a prison employee, and assault with a deadly weapon. The judge sentenced him to 2 to 4 years in a Michigan state prison. Jose served his time in Michigan. He was released on parole in 1992. After getting out of prison, he moved back to Texas. After Jose Santellán Sr. moved back to Texas in 1992, he started a relationship with a woman named Yolanda Garza. Yolanda was 31 years old. She worked as a nurse assistant at Hill Country Memorial Hospital in Fredericksburg, Texas. She had children. The relationship between Jose and Yolanda was not peaceful. In July 1993, they had a big fight. After that fight, Yolanda decided she needed to leave Jose. She wrote a resignation letter to the hospital. In the letter, she said she planned to move away because of a domestic problem that was endangering her welfare and possibly the welfare of her children. She was afraid. Jose did not accept the breakup. On August 22, 1993, he went to the hospital parking lot. He knew Yolanda's work schedule. He waited for her to finish her shift. He brought a pistol with him. That day, Yolanda finished work and walked through the parking lot with a coworker named Norma Hoffman. The 2 women walked together for a while. Then they parted ways. Yolanda started walking toward her own car. At that moment, Jose came out from behind some dumpsters or a wall at the end of the parking lot. He walked toward Yolanda. She saw him coming. Instead of going to her car, she changed direction and walked with Jose. Norma Hoffman watched from about 70 feet away. She could see them talking, but she could not hear what they said. She could not tell if they were arguing. The 2 walked together for a short distance. Then Yolanda was about 5 feet away from Jose. She was about 20 feet from where they had first met in the parking lot. Suddenly, Yolanda screamed, "Think of my kids!" Norma Hoffman then saw Jose standing over Yolanda's body. He had his pistol drawn. Norma heard 2 gunshots. She also saw Jose shake his gun, as if trying to fix a jam. She later said there might have been more shots fired before she started paying attention. But the shots stopped. Yolanda was on the ground. She was bleeding and not moving. Norma Hoffman left the parking lot in her vehicle to go get help. At the same time, a hospital housekeeper named Guadalupe Noriega came into the parking lot. She saw Yolanda lying on the ground. Yolanda was bleeding and motionless. Guadalupe ran back into the hospital to find help. When she came back outside to the parking lot, she saw something new. Jose's car was now parked next to Yolanda's body. Jose was loading Yolanda into the passenger seat of his car. He also grabbed her backpack. Then he got into the driver's seat and drove away. Jose did not take Yolanda to a hospital. He did not call for an ambulance. Instead, he drove west. He drove for several hours. Later, he confessed why he took her body. He said, "I just wanted to get away and be with her and spend some time together." Eventually, Jose stopped at a motel in a town called Campwood, Texas. He checked into a room. Then he carried Yolanda's body from his car into the motel room. Her body was already dead. She had died from the gunshot wounds in the parking lot. Inside the motel room, Jose did things to Yolanda's body. He engaged in various sexual acts with the corpse. He stayed in the motel room for some time. As the hours passed, Yolanda's body started to decay. It began to smell bad. To try to cover up the smell, Jose poured perfume on her body. While he was in the motel room, Jose also wrote several letters. He wrote to his family members. In the letters, he asked them to forgive him for killing Yolanda. 2 days passed. On August 24, 1993, the police found Jose at the motel in Campwood. They arrested him there. After the arrest, Jose gave a confession voluntarily. He did not fight or deny what he had done. He told the police the same things he had written in his letters. At the time of the arrest, Jose was also on the run. He later admitted that while fleeing after the murder, he had robbed a store in Uvalde, Texas at gunpoint. After the arrest, Jose was taken to jail. He was held pending trial for the murder of Yolanda Garza. Even while in jail, he continued to be violent. In November 1993, while waiting for his capital murder trial, Jose assaulted a jailer. He punched the jailer in the face and ribs and stomped on his glasses. After Jose Santillan, Sr. drove away from the hospital parking lot with Yolanda Garza's body, the two witnesses took action. Norma Hoffman had left to get help. Guadalupe Noriega had run back into the hospital. Hospital staff called the police. Officers from the Fredericksburg Police Department arrived at the parking lot. They found blood on the ground. They also found spent bullet casings from a pistol. Yolanda was missing. Her car was still in the lot. The police began searching for Jose Santillan. The police knew who Jose was because Yolanda had been in a relationship with him. They also learned that Yolanda had recently written a letter about a domestic problem with him. The police put out a description of Jose and his car. They began tracking his route. 2 days later, on August 24, 1993, police officers located Jose at a motel in Camp Wood, Texas. Camp Wood is a small town west of Fredericksburg. The officers went to the motel room. Inside, they found Yolanda's body. They also found the letters Jose had written to his family asking for forgiveness. The perfume bottle was there. The officers arrested Jose without a fight. After his arrest, Jose gave a full confession. He told the police everything he had done. He explained that he took her body because he wanted to be with her. He admitted to the sex acts with the corpse. He also admitted to robbing a store in Uvalde at gunpoint while fleeing. The police used his confession as a key piece of evidence. Jose was taken to the Gillespie County Jail. On April 26, 1994, a grand jury indicted him for capital murder. The charge was that he murdered Yolanda Garza while in the course of attempting to commit kidnapping. In Texas, that type of murder qualifies for the death penalty. On March 8, 1995, Jose's trial began in the 216th Judicial District Court of Gillespie County. He pleaded not guilty. The prosecutors presented witnesses, including Norma Hoffman and Guadalupe Noriega. They presented the physical evidence from the parking lot and the motel room. They presented Jose's confession. The jury heard everything. On March 10, 1995, the jury found Jose Santillan, Sr. guilty of capital murder. The same jury then decided his punishment. They sentenced him to death. After the sentence, Jose was moved to death row at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. From there, he began his appeals. His conviction and sentence were automatically appealed to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. On January 29, 1997, that court affirmed his conviction. Jose then filed a habeas corpus petition in state court. The trial court recommended denying relief, and the Court of Criminal Appeals agreed on March 18, 1998. On September 18, 1998, a federal district court in Texas stayed his execution. Jose filed a federal habeas petition. On March 10, 2000, the federal district court granted him partial relief. The judge ruled that the evidence did not prove kidnapping, so the death sentence might be invalid. The court ordered a new trial, but the Texas Attorney General appealed that decision to the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. On October 17, 2001, the Fifth Circuit reversed the district court. The appeals court ruled that the state court's decision was reasonable. The death sentence was reinstated. On February 12, 2002, Jose asked the United States Supreme Court to hear his case. A federal district court again stayed his execution the next day. But on March 15, 2002, the Fifth Circuit vacated that stay. Jose filed a second request with the Supreme Court on March 25, 2002. The Supreme Court did not stop the execution. The execution was set for April 10, 2002. On that day, Jose Santellán, Sr. was 40 years old. He was taken to the execution chamber in Huntsville, Texas. He was given a choice for his last meal. He asked for 12 pieces of fried chicken, mashed potatoes with brown gravy, 2 rolls with butter, 2 Pepsis, 1 pint of strawberry ice cream, and 1 pint of vanilla ice cream. He ate the meal. His final words were spoken in a voice choked with emotion. He said, "I hope and pray they can forgive me. I loved Yolanda a lot. Even though they're not here, I hope they will read my words." He then told his relatives, who were watching from a nearby room, that he loved them all and thanked them for their support. As they cried, he told them he would be all right. He also said to the other men on death row, "Stay strong. I hope to see you someday." At 6 p.m. or shortly after, the lethal injection was administered. Jose Santellán, Sr. was pronounced dead. Yolanda Garza's family was left to mourn her loss, and the case was closed. Story 7. William Kendrick Burns was born on July 4, 1958. He was born in the state of Texas. His family lived in or near the city of Texarkana. Texarkana sits on the border between Texas and Arkansas. William was a black male. William grew up with at least one brother. His brother's name was Victor. Victor was younger than William. The two brothers spent a lot of time together as they got older. They lived with their mother. Their mother's home was an important place for the family. William went to school in Texarkana. He finished his high school education. After he finished school, he needed to find a job. He wanted to earn money and support himself. William found work at a local factory. The factory was called a creosote plant. It was the Texarkana Wood Preserving Company. The plant treated wood with chemicals. William's job was to work as a boiler operator. He worked the late shift at night. His job was to keep the boiler running while other workers were not there. One day, the company fired William from his job. He was let go. He was angry about losing his job. He did not accept the firing quietly. After he was fired, William wrote a note. He left the note for the president of the company. In the note, William said that he would get even with the president. He also said that the president would be sorry. This was a threat, but at the time, no one at the company called the police about the note. Before he lost this job, William had been involved in a serious incident. On February 23, 1980, William and his brother Victor were at a nightclub. That night, a man named Leon Callahan was shot and killed. Victor Burns shot Leon Callahan in the back. William was nearby when it happened. William asked Victor, "Did he get him?" After the shooting, the two brothers grabbed another man named Brian Keith Sanders. They forced Sanders into their car. They drove away from the nightclub. The brothers told Sanders they were going to kill him. William was driving the car. He stopped the car on the side of the road. He told Sanders he had a shotgun in the trunk. A fight started. Then a Texas Department of Public Safety trooper arrived. The trooper stopped the fight. William and Victor were arrested for the killing and the kidnapping. They were put in jail, but later they were released on bail. They were free while they waited for their trial. After William was fired from the creosote plant, he had no job. He had been out on bail for the 1980 killing and kidnapping. He was still waiting for that trial to happen. He spent time with his brother Victor and with a friend named Danny Ray Harris. The three of them were together often. William was now 22 years old. He had a temper. He had threatened the president of the company. He had been present when a man was killed. He had helped kidnap another man. He had no regular work. He had a rifle and a pistol. He was not a person who followed the law. But up to this point, he had not been convicted of any crime in court. He was simply a free man on bail, living in Texarkana with his mother and brother, and holding on to his anger about being fired. 2 months passed after William Burns was fired from the creosote plant. During that time, William stayed angry. He had threatened the company president. He had not forgotten that threat. He wanted to do something to get back at the company. On the night of March 27, 1981, William decided to act. He was with his brother Victor Burns and their friend Danny Ray Harris. The three men were together. They talked about going to the creosote plant. William knew the plant well because he used to work there. He knew that someone would be working alone at night. The job was to keep the boiler burning. That was the same job William had lost. William also knew that Friday was payday. He thought the person working that night might have money on them. The three men planned to go to the plant after midnight. They planned to rob whoever was working there. Before they left, William got 2 guns. He took a .22 caliber Winchester rifle. He also took a .22 caliber pistol. He hid the pistol in his pants. He covered the pistol with his shirt so the others could not see it. William carried the rifle. Victor and Danny did not know about the pistol at first. The three men walked to the plant. They followed the railroad tracks. The plant was the Texarkana Wood Preserving Company. It was late at night. It was almost midnight when they arrived. When they got near the plant, they approached a large tin building. This was the treating room. Inside the building, a person was working. The person was throwing wood into the burner. William looked through a crack in the tin wall. He saw the person clearly. The person inside was an 18-year-old high school senior. His name was Johnny Lynn Hamlet. Johnny was a white male. He was a student in his final year of high school. He had a wife named Anita. He also had a daughter who was only 1 month old. Johnny had started working at the creosote plant about 3 months earlier. He had taken the night shift job that William used to have. That night, Johnny was working alone. Another employee could not come to work, so Johnny agreed to work a double shift. He was inside the boiler room, doing his job, when William and the others arrived outside. William told Victor and Danny to be quiet. He said there was someone inside. Danny Harris told William to shoot the person with the rifle. Danny did not know William also had the pistol. Danny kept saying the word shoot. He wanted William to fire. Instead of using the rifle himself, William handed the rifle to Danny. Danny took the rifle. He moved to the side of the building. There was a large opening where the conveyor belt went in. Danny positioned himself there. William then pulled out the hidden pistol. He aimed through the crack in the tin wall. He fired the pistol twice. Those were the only 2 bullets in the pistol. Both shots went into the building toward Johnny Hamlet. After William fired, he heard the rifle start firing. Danny shot the rifle many times. William later said it sounded like 10 or 11 shots. The bullets came from the rifle through the opening where Danny was standing. Inside the building, Johnny Hamlet was hit. He fell. He started hollering from the pain. But he could not escape. The bullets kept hitting him. After the shooting stopped, William went around the building and went inside. He saw Johnny lying over a machine. Johnny was badly wounded. He had been shot many times in the neck, chest, and head. He was still alive at that moment, but he was dying. William looked at Johnny's body. He saw a wallet sticking out of Johnny's back pocket. The wallet was on the right side. Danny Harris reached down and took the wallet. The 3 men left the building. Victor had been standing outside by some wood piles the whole time. He did not go inside. When they came out, Victor said that the person probably got paid that day. Danny opened the wallet. Inside the wallet, there was money. It looked like about $80 or $90. Later, police determined the exact amount was $110. Victor pulled the money out of the wallet. Then Victor started to throw the wallet away. But William stopped him. William said he did not have a wallet, and he wanted that one. So William kept the wallet. The 3 men left the plant. They took the money and the wallet. They left Johnny Hamlet's body inside the boiler room. Johnny died there from multiple gunshot wounds. In total, he had 14 gunshot wounds on his body. He was only 18 years old. He had a 1-month-old daughter who would never know her father. The next day, William took the wallet. He removed everything that was inside it. The wallet contained Johnny's driver's license, his social security card, and his school identification card. William put all of these items into a coffee can. He also put something of his own into the coffee can, a highway patrol ticket that had been issued to William Burns. Then he drove to a remote dirt road. He threw the coffee can onto the side of the road. William kept the wallet itself. He put a newspaper clipping into the wallet. The newspaper clipping was about the police investigation of Johnny Hamlet's murder. William carried the wallet with him after that. At the plant, Johnny's body was found later. Police arrived. They saw that Johnny had been shot many times. They found 8 spent .22 caliber shell casings at the scene. They also recovered bullets from Johnny's body. 11 bullets were taken out of his body. 7 of those bullets came from the rifle. 2 of the bullets came from a pistol. The other 2 bullets could not be matched to any gun. The police began to investigate. They did not have any suspects at first. But someone in the community heard something. That person called the police with a tip. The tip told the police to look at William Burns. While the police were still investigating, William Burns continued to carry Johnny Hamlet's wallet. He did not try to hide it. He did not throw it away. He kept it on his person. Inside the wallet, he kept the newspaper clipping about the murder he had committed. The police received an anonymous tip. Someone told them to look at William Burns for the murder of Johnny Hamlet. The police acted on that tip. They went to find William Burns. When the police questioned William, he did not remain silent. He admitted to being involved in the shooting. He gave the police a written statement. In the statement, he explained what happened that night at the creosote plant. He told them about the rifle and the pistol. He told them about taking the wallet. At the time of the questioning, William was still carrying Johnny's wallet. The police found the wallet on William's person. Inside the wallet, there was a newspaper clipping. That clipping was about the police investigation of the murder. William had been keeping track of the case against himself. William then took the police to a remote dirt road. He showed them where he had thrown the coffee can. The police found the coffee can exactly where William said it would be. Inside the can, they found Johnny Hamlet's driver's license, social security card, and school ID card. They also found a highway patrol ticket that had been issued to William Burns. That ticket connected William directly to the evidence. Next, William directed the police to the location of the rifle. He told them it was at his mother's residence. The police went to the house. They searched the attic of an open carport. They found the .22 caliber Winchester rifle there. The police took the rifle for testing. William also told the police about the pistol. He said they could find a .22 caliber pistol under his mattress. The police searched the residence where William had been staying. They looked under the mattress. They looked in other places, but they never found the pistol. The second weapon was gone. The police sent the rifle to a ballistics lab. The experts tested the rifle. They confirmed that the rifle had fired at least 7 of the 11 bullets taken from Johnny's body. They also matched the 8 spent shell casings found at the crime scene to the same rifle. 2 of the bullets from Johnny's body did not come from the rifle. Those bullets came from a pistol. That matched William's statement that he had fired 2 shots from a pistol. The police also found a .22 caliber bullet in the pocket of William's jacket. He was wearing the jacket when he was arrested. That bullet was kept as evidence. The police arrested William Burns. They also arrested his brother Victor Burns. Danny Ray Harris was also arrested and charged separately. All 3 men faced charges for the capital murder of Johnny Hamlet. In September 1981, William and Victor Burns were tried together in a joint trial. The jury found both brothers guilty of capital murder. The jury sentenced both brothers to death. But the case did not end there. William and Victor appealed their convictions. In 1985, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals looked at the case. The court found an error in the jury instructions. The trial court had not told the jury that Danny Ray Harris was an accomplice as a matter of law. This was a mistake. The appeals court reversed the convictions. William and Victor were given new trials. Before the second trial, the brothers asked to be tried separately. The court agreed. Victor Burns then made a different choice. He pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of non-capital murder. He did not receive the death penalty. Instead, Victor was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He remains in prison to this day. His parole requests have been denied. William Burns went to trial for the second time in July 1986. He was convicted again. The jury sentenced him to death again. But William appealed once more. In 1988, the appeals court reversed his conviction again. This time, the court said the trial judge had made an error. The judge had improperly excluded evidence that could have helped William. That evidence was about his work history and family background. The court said the jury should have been allowed to hear that information before deciding on the death penalty. William Burns was tried for the third time. The trial began in August 1989. On August 24, 1989, the jury found William guilty of capital murder. The next day, August 25, 1989, the same jury sentenced him to death. This time, the conviction and sentence were upheld on appeal. The charges against Danny Ray Harris were eventually dismissed. He was not tried for the murder of Johnny Hamlet. A different man named Danny Ray Harris was executed in Texas in 1993, but that was for a separate crime committed before 1981. William Burns spent more than 12 years on death row after his third conviction. He filed appeals in state and federal courts. All of his appeals were denied. The United States Supreme Court refused to hear his case on April 1, 2002. On April 11, 2002, William Kendrick Burns was executed by lethal injection in Huntsville, Texas. He was 43 years old. Before the drugs were given, he made his final statement. He said he was sorry he caused his mother so much pain. He said he loved his family. He said he hurt because they would be hurting. Then he mentioned wanting to talk to the victims. The lethal drugs began to take effect. He gasped and coughed. At 6:21 p.m., he was pronounced dead. Johnny Lynn Hamlet's widow, Anita, watched from the witness room. She later said that her husband had been dead longer than he was alive at that point. She said her marriage was like a wonderful dream that ended in a monstrous nightmare. Her daughter, who was only 1 month old when her father was killed, grew up without ever knowing Johnny Hamlet. The story of William Kendrick Burns ends in a Texas death chamber, with an 18-year-old high school senior buried long before his time, and a killer who never truly changed.